Good evening, everybody. This is John and Rob at Co-Anglers Corner. We're going to be bringing on a special guest, Matty Wong, elite angler. This will be his third year competing on the elites. Just a little bit about Matt. He grew up in Hawaii. He's the first and only, as far as I'm aware of, professional elite angler from the state of Hawaii. A little bit, his story is a little different. Growing up in Hawaii, moved to California to become a better bass angler. And he qualified through the Bass Federation. It's no easy task. I tried it several years and actually gave up on trying to qualify through that way. He did it back in 2020, 21 timeframe when all the high-tech electronics started coming about. However, he did it in an old 1993, I want to say it was a 364 Ranger. But no, without further ado, we're going to bring Matty on and let him talk a little bit about that and go from there.
Hey, John, Rob, what's up, guys? How's it?
How's it going, Matt?
How's it going?
Doing well.
Wow.
Excellent.
Hope you guys are nice and warm. It's a little frozen tundra down here in Texas right now, but
well, I'm up in New
Kentucky.
York.
It is too.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was 8 degrees when I went to work this morning. So.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Come on up.
Here.
The St. Lawrence River's still running.
Wow, she's not froze yet, huh?
No, not yet. I probably will be after this weekend. But
gee.
Yeah.
A lot of these lakes down here in Texas are hard water right now, which is the first time I've ever seen it. But it was pretty wild. I experienced my first time in negative temperatures.
Okay.
My girlfriend and I went to a wedding in Denver, and it was -6. And well, of course, we had to walk outside and grab ourselves some hot chocolate as like a novelty, but it was. Oh, I'm glad I don't have to live in that stuff, man. That's
yeah. The good thing about that though is you can stay inside.
This is true. This is true.
You get a lot of map study done and
yeah,
organization. Yeah, all the fun stuff.
Get all that done. So
that's true. It kind of forces your hand.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
No, just if you don't mind talking about how you got to the elites.
Yeah, sure. It was always something that it intrigued me as like a little kid. Watching Roland Martin and Bill Dance and Hank Parker, and it's just the list goes on. And not until I moved out to California in 2013 did I really realize that now I can actually can kind of chase this dream. Again, I was working as a photographer in Los Angeles, and it was my only way to kind of get out of the hustle and the bustle of city living. And I had really kind of got just completely addicted to bass fishing when I got to California. I did it a lot growing up in Hawaii. We have bass, we have peacock bass, we have smallmouth and largemouth on Oahu, but you can only fish so much techniques when the water temp's 75 year round. So you don't feel that challenged once you kind of figure them out. Then it's just small subtle patterns that change throughout the year. But in California, there was the whole swim bait deal. There was all this finesse stuff that I wasn't really fully used to, and it really intrigued me. And so, like I said, I was just kind of, while I was working in the photo industry, I was looking into how can I start competing. And one of the things that I looked up on online was the Bass Federation, Bass Nation, and all they said was, as long as you are a member of an affiliated bass club, that you can start fishing the nation, then you pay your nation dues and whatnot. And so I joined the Ventura County Bass Club, and that group of guys back, I was in 2018, I joined their club. Okay. And fished some of my first tournaments in 2018, and it just kind of, everything just, I was so eaten up by it. All I wanted to do was just fish tournaments. And so one of the guys in the club had told me that hey, you know that if you fish the Bass Nation deal, you have a chance of like fishing a classic. And I had no clue, I was still kind of new to all of it. And I remember that conversation. He told me that, and I was like, there's no way. He's like, yeah, no, serious. I mean, it's a long road, but it's possible. And I'm like, it's kind of like a lotto system in a way, but he's like, yeah, I mean, you got to beat a lot of guys, but there's a possibility. And for me, that was enough. I was like, that's cool. Whether it's just neat that it gives the average, the weekend warrior, the guy who's just passionate about fishing a chance at their dream and a crack at it. And so in 2020, actually in 2019, I fished as a co-angler, and I got my butt handed to me because I was trying to power fish from behind the boat. And so that was a big learning experience for me. So in 2019, like I learned a lot about how to approach water that has already been, kind of hammered by a boater, and what kind of damage you can do with a spinning rod and a finesse setup. And then when to bust out certain power baits and whatnot. 2020, after a series of random events, I think, and I'll just talk on one story. It was one of the last qualifiers for the team, and we were fishing the California Delta. There was this gentleman, bless his heart. He was like, I think he was 78 or something like that. And I was inspired watching him still, like, going after it. But I remember on the takeoff, we get swamped, and it's chilly pre-spawn time. So like, it's cold water. I don't got like anything that's too warm, and I got cold socks now, and we're start heading down this slough on the Delta, and his alarm starts going off. And I'm like kind of tapping him on the shoulder. I'm like, do you hear your alarm? And he's like, yeah, I wasn't doing that yesterday. And I'm like, but like maybe we should like come off of it, And he's like, no, we're gonna send it to Sycamore, which was like another 6 miles. And we get to Sycamore, and his motor goes into Guardian mode. And basically I spent the rest of my day troubleshooting the motor with him and his son that was on the phone, who's a mechanic. And I just remember thinking, I spent all this time prepping up to go to the Delta, to get the hotel, to get, all the baits and tackle and everything like that, draw, like to have a unfortunate draw of where you had mishaps happen. It was completely out of my control. And it kind of told, at that point I realized, you know what, I think I'm going to just do it as a boater next year. I don't want to put my fate in someone else's hands. I want to be the one. If I'm going to get kicked out, if I'm not going to make it, I want it to be on me. I don't want it to be on someone else. Funny stories. I'm still friends with that guy today. His name's Jim. So shout out, Jim, if you're listening. And in 2020, that's when I decided, that I'm going to fish the nation. And I had spent every waking minute that I had, like, if I had a job in Los Angeles, I would take, whatever, if it was the weekend that I had off, I would shoot up and get in my boat, which was about an hour away, and parked in a dirt lot, and bring all my rods with me. And I actually fished out of my own boat like I would as a co-angler, because John, you nailed it. It was a Comanche 364, and not a lot of tackle space. Actually, one of my buddies helped me build a compartment before I actually used it at the Nationals. So that was kind of neat to be able to put some stuff away. But besides that, I would just fish out of a regular tote that I would carry all my plano boxes in. But I remember I had spent a couple years really dedicating my craft towards learning how to flip, learning how to punch, learning like power fishing techniques, stuff that I didn't do in Hawaii. I learned up on the Delta, and the California Delta was like a really big teacher for me. And all those guys up there, just kind of watching what they did, whether it was stuff, talks that they did online, or actually going out on the water and running into a couple of them on the, on the river, and asking them like, "Hey, do you mind if I just kind of just watch you fish?" I don't mean to be weird, but can I just follow you as we just work this way down, and I just put a rod down and I just watched him, and we just talked story the whole way. And I remember I was just right behind him, and he worked this whole it was like a Thule edge with a bunch of hydrilla, and he taught me how to punch. And so there was multiple times where I had just random people that I had seen out there that I knew that had nice boats and had great technique. I was, curious, and just being a student of the sport, I just kind of soaked it all in. Sorry, I completely digress. So I go back to the Bass Nation. This is my first year as a boater. My first tournament is on Pine Flat, and it's a spotted bass lake. It's in February. It's very cold. There's frost everywhere, but there's also good largemouth in this lake. They're really rare, but they are existent, and they also will stock trout up there on occasion. I spent all of 2019 in my free time working on throwing bigger swim baits, and I ended up my second fish of the morning after being the last boat in a draw, and with my old 150 two-stroke Yamaha, kind of making it to my spot, announcing to everyone that I was there because of how loud that thing is. But I pulled in, and it was like my first. It was like my second cast on this straight that I had found some fish the previous day in practice, and I caught a 2-pound spot, which was a good fish, and I was really happy about it. Get it in the boat, make another cast, and I stick an 8-pound largemouth, and the average bag size of that during that tournament was 7.5 pounds for 5 fish. And so needless to say, I ended up leading day one. I beat out the local hammer that won the previous year. He had a 6-pound kicker, and I came in with an 8-pound kicker. I weighed 16 pounds, and he weighed 14.
Nice.
And anyway, the second day didn't go quite as planned. I didn't catch another big giant kicker, but I had enough to keep me up in the top 3, and which was really great points going towards the team for the California State team. We had another tournament on Nacimiento, which is in the Central California region, and I remember getting up there and practicing, and I had a buddy that was living in that area. He's like, "Oh, I'll take you around the lake. I'll show you it for the first time." I'm like, "Sounds good," And so kind of we've buddy boated. I go to turn my motor on. It's about 5 o'clock or so. The lake closes at 5:30, and my flywheel blows off the top of my head, and my starter is hanging off the block, and my buddy has to tow me back on pad with his skeeter, and I thought, I'm like, well, dang, man, I just drove a couple hours to get up here and got a campsite, got all this stuff, and now I can't even start my boat. I love how small the fishing world is and how everyone kind of looks out for each other. I called my buddy, and I'm like, "Hey, I just had this happen." He's like, "Let me get on the horn." And I call a couple other friends, like, "Let me get on the horn. And within I want to say it was within 10 or 15 minutes, I got a guy calling me back like, "Hey, so Jared Littner's brother is a Yamaha mechanic in Avalon, which is near Pismo Beach. If you can get to Pismo tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, he said he'll help you out." And I'm like, done. I was dating a girl at the time where her uncle was the harbor commissioner, so that even helped part of the story, which is just crazy. So I ended up towing the boat there. I drove back from Nacimiento, which was probably an hour and a half. It wasn't that far of a drive. Get in. He has one of his guys aluminum weld my starter back onto my motor, and it was able to turn over and got her working again. I'll never forget. He goes, yeah, you're good to go. Just pay for his lunch. Like he was talking about his welder. He's like, yeah, just pay for his lunch. I'm like, really? There's nothing else? He's like, yeah. And then, I'll get like 20% of whatever you win. And I'm like, all right, deal. And, and so I go up, I fish the Nacimiento. I'm able to go back. I get a half a day of practice in. I find this cool little chatterbait bite in the back of a creek where everyone was on the main lake trying to fish shad-like patterns and whatnot. I found a random bluegill bite in the back of a creek that I had all to myself. I think I ended up in 4th place there and cashed a little check, but again, getting really great points towards the team. And I went back. I bought a case. I asked my buddy. I'm like, "Hey, what kind of beer does he like to drink?" He's like, "I think he just drinks Coors." I'm like, "All right." So I went and like bought him a case of Coors Light. I dropped it on his desk. He's like, "What the hell is this?" And I was like, 20%. And so I'm like, "Hey, just so you know, like if it wasn't for you, I couldn't have fished this tournament. So thank you so much." And it's funny on how I had all these kind of small moments come together. For me, and it kind of further cements some of the things that I believe in, which is like everything has a purpose and everything happens for a reason. And I think people get put in your life for lessons and also maybe certain things that you might not have hindsight for or understand why, but there's always a lesson and always. I don't know. I think that's why it's life makes it incredible, right? It's always keeping you on your toes, but then in a dire strait where you think that everything's done, this is all my shot's over or whatever, and then you get a little beacon of light, and that person was meant to be there right at that time for however you want to chalk it up. But either way, our tournament year gets cut short because of COVID. And they're like, okay, well, I was sitting, I think, 2nd in AOY or something like that because of that. I'm like, all right, well, they're like, we're going to have a tournament up on Clear Lake. And I would love to fish Clear Lake. If you guys aren't familiar with Clear Lake, it's one of the largest natural lakes in California, if you're not counting Lake Tahoe. It's an incredible bass fishery. If you ever have a chance to go out to Clear Lake, it's phenomenal. But for me, it just didn't make any sense. It was the first time all of Hollywood was closed down. My business had completely shut down. All my clients stopped working. Everything shut down. I was on unemployment for the very first time in my life, and it was a scary time. And for me, I didn't want to spend. It was going to cost me $450 to get up to the Delta or to get up to Clear Lake, and then not even to for other expenses and whatnot. So I'm like, you know what? It's not worth it for me to go up there just to try and chase an AOY trophy or a little plaque. My main goal was to get on the team, and I had done that. And so from there, I had found out that the regionals was going to be on Lake Havasu, and I had fished Lake Havasu, I think 3 times. I had done 3 different trips up there, really fell in love with the place. It was a cool combination between Clear Lake and the Delta mixed in together. But then there's big old smallmouth in there and good largemouth. So it was neat because I was able to fish my strengths. I fished a jerkbait and a glide bait, and I ended up, and this was a time where, well, one, I didn't have any type of electronics on my boat. I had a tiny X92 Lowrance unit, which is a black and white 2D unit. No side scan or anything like that. And that was at my console. So I was using my phone as my navionics. I pulled the navionics app, and I would use that to find whatever structure I was looking for. And then up on the bow, I had I think it was like a 7-inch hook Lowrance unit, which did, again, just 2D, and I didn't have any mapping chips, so it was just like when it would go into an arm or something like that, it was just like, it looked like old Coleco, just all blocks, and and my boat was like half the time on land somewhere, and then I'd drop a waypoint, and so there'd be like a bass like up on the green. But I ended up being able to fish something that I was confident in doing, and I ended up out of, I think there was 70 something guys there at the regionals, and I led day one with I think a 17.5 pound bag of smallmouth. And where the average bag there was, I think, around 8 pounds, because guys were only catching like 2 fish, 3 fish here and there. So it felt good because that was a turning moment. A lot of the guys in the club were still kind of like, well, who's this kid? And he hasn't been fishing, that long, but then they're like, he locked himself into his room. He knows something. What's going on? Like, they're all trying to get information out of me. And I'm like, I pre-made a bunch of food. I was staying in. And it was funny because, yeah, like, I think that was the turning moment where I started. I think a lot of the guys on the California side, they're like, all right, I think Matty can catch him. And I ended up finishing third at regionals. And I think day 3, I only caught 3 fish, but 3 fish for 9 pounds. And I was still able to finish top 3, where Taylor Smith ended up winning it. And from then on, Taylor and I developed a little healthy rivalry, and now he's a good buddy of mine. And he's from up in Washington, fishes a lot of Idaho stuff. Incredible angler. He's fished, I think, like 2 classics or something. So, but he beat me and he beat me on Havasu. I told him, like, dude, I owe you one. And when we found out that the Nationals was going to be on the Ouachita River in Louisiana, I start. Before it goes off limits, I start talking to people like, what's going on about this place? And they're like, bring 2 lower units and 4 spare props, and you'll probably go through all of them. And at this time, I had made, I had realized that, you know what, this boat, I feel like I've outgrown it. I think that I need a bigger boat for some of the bigger water tournaments, because the 364 is like a 17-10 foot Ranger. And so I ended up buying a 21 foot 2006 Triton. And I was like trying to get it rigged up and get it all ready. And my buddy's, he's like, hey, why are you going to trailer that boat, like your newer boat, down to the Ouachita where you can tear that thing up? Like, don't discount what you've done in your old boat. Yeah, guys got forward-facing sonar, 360, all the bells and whistles, but look how far you've made it just on your boat. So why don't you just take your old boat? I'll never forget that conversation, because that ultimately was my deciding factor. I'm like, you know what, you're right. I think it would mean the world to me if I was able to do anything with that old boat. And a quick little backstory, and to not get away from this part, but that boat belonged to my dad's best friend in college, and he was kind of like my bass guru growing up in Hawaii. He sent me stuff in the mail. Like, he would send me, like, my very first pack of Zoom flukes was like in the 90s, and he sent me a pack, and he's like, yo, Texas rig this, and skip it underneath the laydowns when they're spawning, and I would crack a bunch of fish. This was well before YouTube and all that stuff, and the bass catalog was like a giant catalog. Yeah. And I remember just having a bass stamp on my tackle box, a bass shield, and getting just a couple packs of baits here and there. And my Uncle Bob would always be down to tell me and share with me information. He loved throwing spinner baits. He was living up in Roseville in Sacramento, and so throughout my childhood, he would either come visit us in Hawaii, and we would go out and we go catch peacock bass or whatever, and then vice versa. I would go and visit him. My parents, we would all fly up and we'd go visit him in Sacramento. But in 2015, my Uncle Bob got diagnosed with a brain tumor, and by 2016 he had passed. I was able to take him fishing for his last time on that boat, and so not only was that a really was like a full circle for me. It was like someone that was like a mentor, and then I seen him in this frail state where I felt like just being able to give back one last time on the water with him was such a huge I don't know. It was so rewarding for me to be able to go and get him back on the water. And we only caught one fish that day. And I asked him to hold it up, and I took a photo of him. And he's like, I didn't even catch this thing. And I'm like, dude, you don't know. Let me just take an image of you like with this bass, because this is something that I'll forever cherish. And so fast forward into 2016 or into 2016, I was starting to kind of be worried about the whole California living. And I asked his wife if what she did with the boat. She had mentioned that she'd put it up on consignment. And so I said, you know what, how much do you want for it? And she's like, I don't know, like $5,000. And I'm like, okay, check's in the mail. And so I bought myself a bass boat that she told me, I know Uncle Bob would want you to have it. So, just $5,000 and we'll call it even. And so, yeah, that's kind of like, if I go back for that boat. So that boat means a lot to me. It means a lot to my dad and my family. And so ultimately, when I was able to bring that boat down to the Ouachita, and to go and do what I did down there, it was really special. And I really feel like Uncle Bob was kind of looking out for me. So it was cool. It was something that when I was fishing there in practice, I didn't have a killer practice. I caught a couple good fish with a spinnerbait, a couple good fish flipping a jig, but all the fish that I caught with this, I was throwing around the crankbait a little bit, and they were all like smaller spots. And it was something that I'm like, all right, well, maybe it's an extra rod that I'll have out, but it wasn't something that I was really going to key in on. And I remember day one, my co-angler, Mark Edmonds out of Alabama, who's just an amazing soul, and we're still really good friends. I call him my Alabama parents. Him and his wife Lisa, and he ended up catching. I think he put like 2 or 3 fish in the boat before I got my first one, and it was cool to just to cheer him on, because I know that he's like, I had fished the Bass Nation for 30 years, and this is my first time making it to the Nationals, and so for him to draw me as his boater, I'm like, man, I don't want to let this guy down, but also I'm trying to win this thing too. But I'm like, every single time you'd catch a fish, he'd be like, oh, I'm like, hey, I'll give him knuckles. I'll be like, heck yeah, man. I'm like, yeah, save me one. I remember I flipped my spinnerbait in this tree like 3 or 4 times. And this is kind of what it was neat. It makes me miss fishing with a co once in a while. And this was one of those instances where I'd flip in the tree 3 or 4 times with a spinnerbait. He rolls up, different angle, different color. 1 cast, boom, 3-pounder. And I'm like, you kidding me? And he did that to me twice. And oh, thanks, Pam. It's kind of cool seeing these things pop up down below. Yeah, so that's when I realized that the subtle nuances of this fishery was different from what I was used to. I was flipping a jig on straight braid. Mark comes behind me, flips the jig in on 20-pound fluoro, gets bit on the same tree that we just flipped. I have an Ultrex on that boat, so that's the one piece of good like electronics that I got on it. I pulled out in the current, I spot locked down. I tied on a 5-foot leader, a 20-pound shooter, and trolled right back to that tree. Flip in, boom, catch a 2-pounder, and I'm like, all right, okay, that was the right move. Keep moving. I have 1 fish in the boat, I believe, and it's 130 on day 1. Mark's got 3, and my world starts to close in. I'm like, man, I can't believe like I drove all this way to weigh in like 1 fish during the Nationals. Like, and I'm like, you know what? Just keep going. I remember watching watching a thing on Kate Pink was talking about Kevin Short was talking about cranking, and he's like, one of my favorite times to crank is bluebird, slick calm, sunny day out, and speed crank in kind of murkier stain water. And I just remember like just that little blimp of like info popping in, and I remember picking up a balsa crank and start going down the straight. There was a bunch of great looking laydowns. And I start fishing it, and the negativity was like the negative thoughts were creeping in, but I was just trying to keep them out by staying focused at my task at hand. And I remember if you go back and watch this, it's kind of neat. And if you guys haven't watched it yet, I encourage you to go back onto my YouTube, Matty Wong Fishing, and type in the Ouachita River and the Nationals and whatnot. But you can actually see it. I go to hang up that crankbait on my reel, and my treble hook misses. And as I miss, I go and stick it on again, and I look up and I see a lane of this one lay down right at the end in a perfect transition into my bank. And I'm like, you know what? One more cast. Yep. Wing out over there, and I stick a 3-pounder. And that was the turning point for me in that tournament. And I told Mark, and I was like, hold on, buddy, we're going to run and gun a whole bunch of stuff right now. And he's like, all right, let's do it. And so I literally pull the trolling motor, blast down the lake to the next little straight that looked kind of similar to that, throw out, 4th cast in, stick a 3. And at this moment, I'm like, okay, this is the bite window, and I know what they're eating. This is the angle that I got to tack them. And I just kept going. I hit this other little riprap straight, ended up catching 2 more fish, and I was elated. I had a limit. And granted, this fishery, Ouachita River, was fishing very stingy. So if you're to come in with a limit, that was a good day. And I'm like, okay, I'm stoked to have a limit. But I was able to cull up on like my last couple casts, and I had a solid limit. I think I had like, maybe it was like 10.5 or 11 pounds. For a Ouachita, that's solid. Yeah. And so I go in. Kobe Cardin weighs 19 pounds. He runs all the way up to the Darbone spillway, which is like a 2.5-hour run through a minefield of cypress stumps, and he sacks 19 pounds. My buddy Mark, my he's like, man, I know. He's like, man, that boy Kobe, he's just going off because he was like his fellow Alabama teammate, right? And I'm like, dang. Well, all right, Kobe's got this one in the bag then. I remember going out the day 2, and I drew my buddy Dustin Draft from Wisconsin. Again, another friend that I'm still really close with. Stayed with him when we were up in La Crosse for the elites. And he did the same thing to me, man. I went up, I caught 2 fish right away. I fished the straight a little bit closer to the ramp, and then I went and to hit these bigger trees. And I know that there was kind of this earlier morning run. Oh yeah, Pam, you know what's up. That's a sketchy run.
Yeah, she knows.
She knows.
Yeah, that's her backyard.
Oh yeah, that place, man. Whew. Forever and ever, Ouachita River will hold a very special place in my heart. But either way, so I'm fishing this laydown, and I thought that I'm like, okay, I'm not going to let the same thing that Mark did to me the day before happen again. And so I told Dustin, I'm like, hey man, I'm sorry, dude, but I just got to do this. And so I nose in on this tree. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I make like 6 casts of the thing. Switch up the angle, make a bunch of casts, and I caught those 2 fish. We pulled to another tree and make those casts. He just slow rolls a spinnerbait right out the front of this tree and catches it 3.5. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I just lit this tree up. I pulled to the next tree that's not even 15 yards up ahead. And I picked the whole thing apart too, just different angles. He flips behind the boat right at the end of the tree and then picks up the other one. And so it was another 3.5. And I think those are the only, I think he caught 2 or 3 fish that whole day. But those 2 or 3.5 pounders on the Ouachita were solid fish. And I was like, I definitely could have used those. it's definitely, I was definitely bummed out. And from then I went back to my previous pattern of, throwing the crank a bit, ended up catching a couple other than that. And then I remember going up and I flipped a 4-pounder out of this one stretch that Mark had busted one off the day before. And I knew that there was good fish in this one little bend of this of the main lake channel. And I went up there, I flipped in a half-ounce jig and boat flipped a 4. And I was like, all right, I'm still in this.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a big turning point again for me, mentally, because I knew that, okay, I wanted to at least follow up my day one, but each day I only got, the day one I ended up getting like, I think 6 or 7 bites. And then same with day 2. I think I only got 6 bites. And then the last day we went out, it was a miserable day. It was really, really cold. It was rainy, and I ended up making the decision to do a quick run to try to fish for some retreads real fast, and ended up on my first stop catching a good 3-pounder. Ran to the mouth of Darbone, and maybe Pam can help us out. I don't know the name of the slough that you turn into, but I'm sure it's a pretty famous stretch. You turn in, and when you turn in and you idle down, there's a whole straight of just amazing laydowns that are right off the main creek channel. And every morning that I would go and check that place, it was just loaded with boats going either in and out, trying to get up to the cross, trying to get up to Darbone, and it was just washed out. I made the decision, I'm going to hold off from this place and wait till everyone kind of settles in. And I didn't hit that spot until about 10:30. I went up there and I started rolling the spinnerbait through there, and boom, like stuck another 3.5. And that just got me giddy. I'm like, all right, got to keep moving. And I ended up just running a bunch of new water. And I think the last fish, I caught a small spot. I flipped up a spot on a jig. And then my last fish, there was a straight, this bend where I caught the 4-pounder the previous day. And I look up the river some more. And just a reminder to everyone, I'm working off of 14 gallons of gas. I have 1 working gas tank in this boat. So every morning when the guys in the fuel yard pump your boat up, they're like, all right, which tank? And I'm like, only this one. This is the only one that works. They're like, oh, okay. And so they start filling it up, and like they get almost to the top. And I'm like, wait, hold on. I like shake the boat a bunch. And I'm like, all right, keep going. They're like, what? And I'm like, trust me, this is my lifeline. This is all I got. And they were patient enough, and they waited, and they were able to tap that thing out. But I make this run, and I noticed that it was almost like it was either my Uncle Bob or one of my good friends, Jesse, that had passed earlier that year. But something gave me kind of like this feeling like, hey, you should probably check that straight up there. And I ripped up there, pulled the trolling motor, started going down, and I'm speed cranking this balsa bait, just banging it off of every single stump that I can find. And I remember sticking my last 3.5 pounder, and she got hung up on a log, and she's boiling on the log, and I'm like, oh my gosh, please come off. And then she like pops off the log and comes, and I'm just I look back at that video, and I see all the fish that I boat flipped every single one.
Wow.
and now after I've lost some fish that costed me like a top 10 by trying to flip it or doing something stupid, like I look back and I'm just like, you dumb dummy. Like, I mean, like the lessons that I had to learn in that moment. But it's funny that I look back on it, and I think everything happened for a reason there. And that tournament changed my life. It absolutely changed my life, and I feel grateful for Bass, and the community. And so
I like to be the people's champ in a way, where it's the weekend warriors, the guys that still have a dream. I tell them it's possible. If this kid from Hawaii with a busted ass boat can go out and beat out 20,000 people that fish the Bass Nation every year, like anyone can do it. And all you need is just the right mindset, and don't tell yourself no. And you never know what can happen. So, that's kind of the condensed version of the story. But I try to like look back on that and soak it in, because I'll never forget those feelings. Making those phone calls, and it was so cool. The guys from Arizona they're like, because we drove all the way to Louisiana from California. They're like, hey man, like, I know you're solo, like we'll caravan with you if you want. And my buddy Zach and Jake, they drove with me. Jake got in my truck and drove my truck while I was on the phone calling back home, and we ended up making it back within, I felt like it was 24 hours, but we just the night. It was crazy. I was floating the whole way home. I barely remember it. But yeah, what a life-changing moment. And now to kind of have a few years of doing this full time, it has changed in certain ways for me. It has gone from this release of tension from getting away from my mundane like work life that I had in Los Angeles, to like this release of going out into the nature and having friendly camaraderie with with guys in the club and whatnot. And it's turned into a job. And there's times where it is really difficult to wake up, even though they're like, wait, you get to go fishing. And I'm like, it's 20 degrees out. I've fished 12 days in a row. My hands are bleeding. I'm like malnutrition. I have malnutrition. Like I'm not feeling good right now, but you got to go out and you got to do it. And, but I always try to remind myself that there's thousands of guys that would love to be in the position that I am, and that I got to take every bit of it, and try to just enjoy it while I have it. And so that's, it's
about that.
It's a constant reminder I like to give myself when you got countless hours behind the truck and driving spot to spot, crashing on buddies' couches. My good friend Suguru let me crash at his place while we're rigging up the boat. So it's it's the Bass family ultimately makes it really special for me. I just think that it's so cool that we have a very special sport that's unlike no other, where you have so many different factors that play into it. But then there's something that goes all the way down to the purest form of just catching a fish that, a toddler can get that feeling and be hooked for the rest of his life. And that's, I'm a prime example of that.
Yeah,
definitely. Man, that fires me up. I'm starting Kentucky Bass Nation this year for the first time. So, man, you fired me up right there.
Good, man. Yeah, it's.
Go ahead, Rob. I'm sorry.
No, you good? Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've talked to some guys, and they're like, "Yeah, great guys." Like you said, good camaraderie. You meet a bunch of great folks, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a good time for sure. You doing it as a boater, as a co?
Doing a co this year. Hopefully, maybe go boater next year. But I'll do co, just kind of see how things go. But look forward to it.
No, it's great, man. It's even when I fished as a co for that first year, the amount that I learned, it has been incredible. When you think that I think you lose when you think that you know it all. So that's the coolest thing about bass fishing in our sport, is like it's just a never-ending learning curve.
Yeah, changing conditions and changing tactics. It does.
Thanks, Pam.
Says, when you love your job, you'll never work a day in your life.
This is true. I think to be able to talk to guys like yourselves, gals like Pam, and people that are just eaten up by the sport, I think that's the most rewarding part for me. Obviously, I'll fish for the rest of my life, regardless if I'm on the elites or not. Like, it's something that I'm going to do forever. But for me, ultimately, it's the most humbling and most inspiring when I get people that are just pumped on my story and just want to talk fishing or, and hang out. So that's really cool.
Yeah. I first heard about you with that tournament on Watchdog.
Okay.
Listen a little bit, and then I'm like, oh, okay. And then I saw your national tournament. I saw the national tournament, and I saw some clips of that. I'm like, you know what? That's a man who didn't really fish a lot, and he's competing against all these guys. He can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent you a message, I want to say like a couple days after that, through Facebook, and, congratulating you. And if you ever get to New York and want to fish Cuba Lake, let me know. I'll hook you up. And you were, it took you a couple days to get back to me, which great. I'm actually shocked that you did reply back. And because I know how busy you were and stuff like that. But no, the offer still stands. I'm 25 minutes away from Cuba Lake. So if you ever need to crash, let me know.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
And I along with you, love the community,
Yeah.
and it makes and you're right, it does make our sport special.
Yeah, no, for sure. I always try to, I try to give everyone as much time as I can, and when I can't respond, I'm very, very buried in a ton of things. But I think all the people that follow me, I think, can attest that I'm pretty good about getting back to everyone. Sometimes not so timely, but if I'm in the middle of rigging a boat, but I always try, because ultimately I see myself in everyone else that has that same dream, and I don't think that there's never a cap in age where you feel like to give up on it. I think that's the coolest thing with fishing, is that Rick Clunn's a prime example. That your best days are never behind you.
Yeah.
And you never accept that. So I think that's it's really neat. And so I always want to give words of encouragement to people, and whatever type of knowledge that I can help shed on things that I've picked up and learned on, throughout the few years. I love to pass it on as well.
Nice.
But yeah, like you said, I fished my whole life, but tournament fishing I've only been doing since 2018. And so it's been a very, very fast learning curve for me. But I think when you learn your basics and then get into, then learning a workflow behind breaking down lakes and behind like keeping it within your comfort zone, I think that's when you become really deadly. And I think when people get into the sport, buy a bunch of stuff, but don't really dedicate a lot of time to each individual technique, I think that's when they can get lost. And so I always encourage people, like, pick up a rod and feel like you have mastered that one technique, and then from there move on to the next. And so for me, my training days were up in the Delta, where I wouldn't throw anything else but a chatterbait for an entire trip. Like an entire trip, I was learning the nuances of a 3/8 ounce chatterbait and a 1/2 ounce chatterbait, and different trailers, different retrieves, like with different areas to fish it. And then when I got into punching, like punching hydrilla, punching grass mats, hyacinth, that's all I did. I kept a punch rod on the deck, and that's it. And I would just punch until my shoulder was going to fall off, and then frogging and whatnot. And then even fishing ponds, it's something that I think a lot of people will kind of not really think of like, I can't, wow, it's a pond, you know, you can learn from a pond. It's like, no, you can learn a lot from a pond, and you can learn a lot about bass behavior, how they set up. There's just a tremendous amount of knowledge that's within a small body of water. And I always tell people don't get discouraged from just going and bank fishing, because I think that's one of the purest things that we can do as an angler, and then two, it's another great way to kind of like hone in on your instinctual skills as hunter gatherer, fishermen, anglers, if you will. It's neat, and and not to dive into it too much. But the difference in technology from where I came from to what I have on my boat now, it's pretty different. But I will say that I'm grateful for my my focus on my individual techniques prior to this. It was, I think if I had got this equipment and didn't put in the reps, didn't put in the countless hours of trying to develop those techniques and understanding the nuances of it, to now having this tool, I wouldn't know how to implement any of those things in the same type of fashion. So
yes,
I always encourage people, just, if you're gonna learn Neko rigging, learn how to, what's the subtleties in the fall of the bait, what baits that you like. And you don't have to go through a whole bunch of different baits. Like for me, like one of my go-to Neko rig worms, I still use today, and it's just one worm, and KVD finesse bullshad, or it was a KVD finesse worm. I'm not sponsored by them, but it's something that I use because I have a lot of confidence in it. So it's, bass will eat it wherever you go, but it's like the subtle nuances of rigging and how you work that bait, and your attention to detail, where how your line's laying on the water and where your rod tip should be, and when you get that bite, how do you come tight, and then the rest of it's kind of the way you fight a fish on 6-pound tests, which will teach you a lot about fish handling if you can get them to the boat with 6-pound.
I'm chuckling about the 6-pound test, but that's primarily what I use.
Yeah.
I mean, you know where I'm at. I fish St. Lawrence River all the time, and 6-pound, 8-pound, that's primarily what I use. It's
funny because it, just like New York, in Southern California, you have a lot of highland reservoirs that have highly pressured fish. And the late great Aaron Martins came from Lake Castaic. And he was one of the guys that I always looked up to. I've met his mom before. I was never able to meet him, but I met a lot of people that he impacted, and to hear the stories about Aaron with 4-pound tests and whatnot, and coming out of Castaic, it was always cool when I was learning 4-pound tests, 5-pound tests, and like light line on Castaic. I just kept thinking to myself, well, if Aaron Martins went through this, I can too, and it's just kind of funny how it all kind of like worked out. But it's there's been incredible anglers that have come before me that have kind of paved the way and gave me a platform to kind of follow and to see that anything's possible.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I want to try to make this a 2-part series. So sometime during the season, because we're about 55 minutes in. We run typically around an hour.
Okay.
But I don't want to let you go without you being able to talk about some of your partners and sponsors. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. I appreciate it. Yeah. I'd love to do a second round with you fellas. We've had a good time. Well, I'm wearing a couple of them.
Yep.
I try not to make it too obvious. I'm sticking up. But Sims is a performance outerwear. I mean, yep. I was just up in sub temperatures in Denver, and if it wasn't for my Sims gear, I was completely comfy. I actually, if you go on my Instagram, well, it's down now, but if you're following me on Instagram, you see a photo of me in a suit with my girlfriend. and that was when I was really freezing. But when I had my Sims gear on, I was completely fine. It's like some of the best foul weather gear that you can have, and it's just really great stuff. Mega Bass, I mean, you can't really say anything negative about that company. They've given me a shot, and they've been with me, basically the whole road so far.
Yep.
So I'm really grateful for Mega Bass. Lateral Vision, they make all my personalized gear. So if you guys are interested in picking up any Matty Wong merch, all the proceeds go to supporting me on the road. You can go and check them out at lateralvisionbrand.com. And then you can type in the search bar on their page, Matty Wong, and the Matty Wong capsule will come up. And you can see the spicy meatball t-shirt that we made. There's a couple other fun t-shirts on there, and I always try to make it engaging and fun. And if anyone picks up a shirt, please send me a selfie, and I want to post it and kind of just share the stoke. So Lateral Vision does a great job in helping me out with that. I also got Gamakatsu hooks, which is a hook brand that I right at conception when they first came out was something that I got behind and used pretty religiously. Sunline, I was the first Sunline rep in Hawaii when I was 19 years old, just out of high school, going to was it community college. So I have a long relationship with Sunline. So for any of those kids that are listening that are going through school or going through any, develop the relationships with the companies that you really believe in. And even if it's something small that you start off with, be grateful for it and nurture that relationship, because ultimately when the time comes and a door opens for you and you have that relationship, you can have the confidence to be able to have that relationship come into full fruition. And Sunline was one of those companies where ultimately, again, it was like a full circle. Bastrix, which is a local company out of Ventura, I wanted to keep a local bait maker near and dear. Brian Evans is an incredible angler and bait maker himself, and he makes a great product with Bastrix. And I just released a new paddle tail color with them called the Wong Shad. So if you want to take a look at some pretty phenomenal hollow body swim bait colors, you can go ahead and check out Bastrix Lure Company. I'm also with Powerhouse Lithium, which is a great lithium company, great batteries. You can use, I have a code here if anyone's interested in purchasing batteries or anything like that. You can use, it's just Matty 10. You get you 10% off. American Bait Works is another a company that I'm with Bait Fuel and Freedom Jigs. This is a great discount code as well. This one goes for all American Bait Works across the board. Anything on the website, this will get you 20% off, and you just type in Matty Wong 20, and that will get you anything from a halo rod down to like a thumper, cutter tail worm to a snag proof frog. So American Bait Works, the team over there, they're incredible, and they've been super supportive. That's a fun story too. I took a friend of a friend out that was visiting from Canada, up near Ontario. And this was back when I was living in Los Angeles, and we went out on the old Ranger on Lake Castaic. And my buddy Rob was like, "Dude, you gotta go out with my other buddy. Well, he's eaten up by bass fishing too. He fishes tournaments and all that." I'm like, "Shoot, man, we'll come out." And so we caught a couple fish. And this was 3 years prior. So when I won nationals, I get a random phone call. And he's like, "Hey man, you remember me? We went fishing with Rob and da-da-da." I'm like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "Hey, I'm good friends with American Bait Works. Like whatever they can help you out with, they said they want to hop on." And so again, it was just one of those cool moments where a connection was able to go a long way, and I'm still good friends with him today. So it's kind of cool that that's all part of the team. Yeti coolers. Their product speaks for themselves. I wish I had a discount code. Sorry, guys. Quiet Carry knives. This is a cool one. These guys just kind of came out, and they make really great really great pocket knives, and then all the way up to fillet knives. So this is a brand that I've really liked. I used to only carry Spyderco pocket knives, and after switching over to these, I will say it's extremely rigid. The blade holds its sharpness, and it feels really great in the hand. So anyone interested in a new cool knife company, Quiet Carry is one to take a look at. And I think, electric sunglasses, a surf brand. For me, being a surfer, I needed to kind of stay in line with my roots. And Electric is based out of Southern California. And so they've Todd Klein, who's an incredible angler. He kind of heads the team over there, and he's still been taking care of me with optics. And some of those bigger glasses that you see me wear, they have incredible side coverage, which for me is the most important thing. As anglers, we spend a lot of time in the water, and so we got to protect our eyes, and especially peripheral damage that you can get from sun leaks. A lot of those other brands that they kind of sit out far, they don't give you that side eye protection. And the Stacker, and I think it's the John, the JJF off of the side plate, which I feel naked when I'm on the water and I don't have them. So those are cool. You can use MW20 for those, and that will give you 20% off a pair of electrics. I'll give you guys the exclusive because I have not publicly announced this yet.
This is 2 in a row.
Yeah, hey, we're on a roll.
Yeah, last week's guest gave us an exclusive as well. So hey,
Really?
Let's keep it going.
All right. Well, you heard it here you heard it first here, and I am partnering for the very first time with a company that I've believed in for basically my entire life, and I've always wanted to run this motor. I recently signed with Yamaha. So
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you very much. And without forgetting, and the important part, which is the business end of things, which is the boat, I am a new member of Basscat as well. So those are two things that you'll see. I'll be putting those, releasing out on my social media probably within the next week as we're getting her rigged up. So whoever's listening in, again, you get the exclusive inside release. I've been trying to keep it on the down low because I wanted to be with the boat and have it fully rigged before I make the announcement. But I also I'm going to do a full walk around and whatnot. But yeah, it would. Thanks, man. It would really, really mean a lot. Thanks, Jim. It would mean a lot to me if you guys would go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you guys haven't done that already. And tell your friends. I try to make a new episode every single Monday. I shoot it myself. I edit myself. I don't have a Kyle Vandy hammer like Brandon Polinick does that shoots on side boats and can edit for him. It's just like it's a personal project that I've been doing now for 3 years. I haven't missed a single Monday, and it's something that it's more so it's 2-part video diary for me, as this portion of my life has gone by so fast and doing so many things. I wanted a way to log it all so I won't forget it. And then 2, to be able to bring along people and I try to edit it and to shoot it in a way where you feel like you're with me. And so feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions and whatnot. Rick's asking, who's rigging my boat?
Rigging your boat.
Oh, I forgot one. Sorry, Suguru. Texas Boat Worlds is a new sponsor of mine. And I guess I will add them as last but not least, Texas Boat World. And they're rigging up my boat. And my buddy Suguru is an incredible mechanic. And so we're going to get the boat rigged up in the next few days. And so if you guys are down, in Texas, anywhere near Austin. I believe they're about an hour outside of Austin, but incredible dealership and rigging facility. So they sell Camus, Bass Cat, Charger, a bunch of pontoon boats as well. And I also, and then completely synonymous of the dealership is their rigging company that does all their rigging. So any tournament guys want their boats rigged, go and check them out. They have full service crew, and I mean, myself, Kenza Kimura, Frank Talley, Stetson Blaylock, Seth Fighter, a bunch of guys get their boats rigged there. So reputable rigging and boat dealership. So shout out to Texas Boat World as well. But
Are you going to take your 364 there?
364? Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I'll be like, hey, can you guys fix that gas tank for me? But
Hey.
yeah, that's a dream. That's a dream of mine. I want to be able to I still have that boat in California, and I eventually one day I want to be able to kind of give her a facelift, and I don't think I'll ever part from that boat.
Way too many memories in that one, man.
I don't blame it. You can always pass it down to your son when you have a kid.
Hey, this is true. This is true.
That's right.
It's a good starter boat.
It's an incredible starter boat. Incredible.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of
memories.
memories.
Hey, go ahead, Rob. I'm sorry.
Yeah, real quick. We talked about this before. I know Matty, you gonna be at the Knoxville East Tennessee Fishing Expo.
Yes, sir.
These guys gonna do a clinic. So y'all at the show. It's Friday, the 26th at 2:30.
Yep.
So catch him. Don't miss it. I don't know. He'll bring the juice, I'm sure.
So I'll be speaking on Friday and also on Saturday. So it's gonna be a 2-day. If you can't make it Friday, come down, see me on Saturday. Please come and say what's up to me. I'd love to meet you. I'm excited because it's going to be my first time to that Tennessee Outdoor Show, and I know that it's just been growing and growing since conception. So I'm excited. Also, if you're in the Texas area, I'm going to be speaking at the Bass University in Athens, which is going to be this Sunday, and I think there's still a couple tickets left. So if you're in the Texas area and you want to hear me talk about how I break down a lake and also how I approach swim bait fishing and some of the modifications that I do, I'll be speaking on those two topics. But that's all I got.
I won't make it to Texas, but I'll definitely watch that video.
Perfect.
But hey, thank you very much, Matty. Appreciate you coming on. I love your story. Love everything about it. And once again, thank you.
No, of course. It's my pleasure. Seriously, you guys. It's been great chatting with you guys, and I hope we get to do this for round 2 later on.
Yeah,
all right, man.
I'll see you in Knoxville.
Sounds good.
All right,
guys.
Thanks a lot, buddy. Take care.
See you.
All right, see you, buddy. Man, two straight exclusives, man. You're pulling out on stops, man.
He was a difficult guest to get. Get on. He was took a trip to Japan. We didn't really get a chance to talk about. Maybe we'll talk about that in the next show.
Yep.
But thank you everybody for tuning in, sticking with us through our difficulties last night. I think we got them figured out tonight.
Yeah, we
Finally.
lost Mover. Yep, you got her tweaked just right, man.
I don't know. We're getting there. One show at a time is all we can do. And you guys take care and have a great week. We'll send out some lineups for next week coming up here in a few days. So you take care.
Peace out.